We are recording in progress according to Zoom. So, welcome everyone. This is CRS 360, our first episode for June, the Human Connection, Country Radio's Superpower. Thanks to Rood, Kevin Cassidy from Strategic. They presented an incredible study at CRS. There was so much in that data set that we have to parse it out. And today we're going to be talking about Country Radio's Superpower, which is personalities. And I'm really proud that we're talking about this, guys, because Justin and Clay know that for the past couple of years, we've leaned heavily into looking at the power of personalities on radio, country radio specifically, obviously here. And we are very big advocates of live personalities. So thank you to Justin and Clay. They're our co-chairs of our research committee for CRB. Kevin and Hal, welcome. Thank you for being here today. And I will share contact information at the end. So if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to this panel directly. But Justin, Clay, Hal, Kevin, welcome back again. An encore performance from a brilliant job at CRS. That was a great study, a great response from that. And once again, parsing it out and leaning into personality. So I'll leave it to you guys. Thank you again for being here and helping us out with CRS 360.
Thank you. Well, we want to thank you guys for entrusting us to do this research, working with us to find questions to dig into the markets with. And we're really excited. We like working with country because country listeners listen actively. It's not passive like some formats. They know what they like, and they're pretty articulate when they tell you what they don't like as well. So it was fun for us to actually dive in and do this research.
We, our company, we're celebrating, actually, oh my gosh, it's next week. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And Kevin and I were in research even for a long time prior to that. And we've tested in all formats. We've tested in other mediums. But, right, Kevin, there's nothing quite like talking to country music fans.
Yeah, they tell you what they like, what they don't like. As they say, stay in your lane, man, if you get out of the area that they like. So
Exactly. So let's dive in and first take a step back. Let's explain the two phases to this project. The large part of the sample, the majority of what we're going to review today was a quantitative study of 1,500 country music fans across the US who are all regular radio listeners. Important to remember as we go through this, we did not quota for country radio music P1s. So this is not all a group of just music P1s to radio. And while we did let it fall naturally by age, gender, and region, we took a step back and they had to like country radio. So it's a little bit larger of a lens. It's not just country radio P1s. So, but then prior to doing that 1,500 person quantitative study, we did one-on-one discussions with 50 country music fans. It was what we call a video focus blog, where we could really hear these country music fans articulate in their own words what country means to them and their perceptions about radio. So, and we'll share some of those videos as we did on stage in Nashville a couple months ago. We'll share some other aspects to that today. All right, so profile of the sample. Again, 100% radio listeners. They all listen regularly to radio, 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. 18 to 54 years old, split 50-50 female male. We regionally distributed the sample according to the most recent US Census. And again, as I said, these are all country music fans. They could rate country music a 4 or 5 on a 5-point scale. And they could also say they listen most to a radio station that has a country music format, but we didn't require 100% of the people in the sample to be country music radio, or rather country radio P1s. So let's dive in. Radio users are streaming country. They know where to get country music beyond just listening to a radio station. 8 out of 10 are listening via streaming services. Again, we didn't quota for that. We quoted for radio users. YouTube social media is also, even higher than people's own music collection. You can see that on the screen. 7 out of 10 consuming country music on YouTube. And when we dig into that a little bit deeper, you can see they're also listening to country on streaming services, YouTube. And when you look at these numbers, they're big. It's not just young people that are driving these numbers. Even 45-54s are using these methods to listen. 45-54s know how to use streaming services. They know how to use YouTube. Where we do start to see a difference by age is when you get into social media. The social media consumption of country is more among the younger half, meaning under 40 years old. All right. Listening via their own country music collection is much higher among the older, longtime country listeners. And in fact, just a little tease, we will have a second webinar, another CRS 360. Kevin will be digging into those life group differences within the country music fan base. And that'll come up in our the next 360 webinar that we do. So as we dig deeper into that, we see that men are indexing higher than women for country music television, for social media, and for YouTube, interestingly. Okay, so when we dig into streaming country music, Spotify leads. They have a 2-to-1 lead over Pandora and Apple Music. They're at the top of the hill in terms of streaming services. When we look at those people that have subscriptions to DSPs, 2 out of 3 have a paid subscription. And if you're a radio broadcaster and you're thinking, all right, how do we pull DSP listeners back to radio? Trying to pursue people with paid subscriptions is not the low-hanging fruit. These people are satisfied. 8 out of 10 of these people who have paid subscriptions are not considering canceling their paid subscriptions. That's not the low-hanging fruit.
And Hal, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is, I mean, I've heard multiple programmers, and have you seen in other studies, because now we've seen it 2 or 3 times, where a lot of radio programmers seem to think, well, those aren't my listeners, the people that are streaming. But there is so much blending going on that people are wanting, what they want, when they want it, how they want it, that there's no exclusive. Do you believe there's no exclusive cume anymore?
Well, we just saw it, and I'm glad you're underlining that because that relates back to that slide we just saw. This is a sample of regular radio users, and 8 out of 10 are listening to country music on streaming services.
Only 21% are exclusive to radio. So this should completely debunk the perception that radio listeners aren't listening to streaming services as well.
Absolutely. And so if you're a broadcaster and you're saying, well, what do we do? How do we pull some more usage back away from DSP back to radio? And what we're seeing is it's among those free subscription accounts. It's the people who are listening to DSPs through ad-supported free subscriptions. That's some low-hanging fruit. 4 out of 10 of those people perceive that they're hearing more commercials lately on their DSPs. And then 76% perceive as many or more commercials on those free streaming accounts as they hear on local radio. That's huge. So it's almost perceptually, it's getting close to an equal level here. So again, low-hanging fruit. 49% of these country-leaning streamers say they're hearing more commercials lately. And then 8 out of 10 feel like they're hearing the same or more commercials as they hear on local radio. That smells like an opportunity. All right, so next we're going to look at why do people stream country music, through DSP services. Those benefits on the streaming services are customization, no commercials, no personalities. Where does radio win? For being fun, free, and easy, for personalities, contesting, and a connection to the community. We're going to kind of dig more into that. You can kind of see where are the brand hooks for local radio.
Hey, Hal, I've got a question for you, because I've always heard this, that with certain products, free is a big thing. Get a free, it's National Cheeseburger Day, get a free cheeseburger. It's National Donut Day, get a free donut. That's one offer, but doesn't, if radio says we're free, all of those. Does that cheapen the product? Because there's certain times where that can make it seem like there's no value to it, but is that the case, or is that a myth?
I mean, you can see 1 out of 3 people say one of the reasons they listen to local radio is because it's free. So the fact that it's such a high percentage of people naming that, they didn't have to say, "Hey, I listen to local radio because it's free," but they did say that in our study, and a large percentage of people. So I don't think it cheapens it at all.
I don't think it takes any of the value away because it's not something that they paid for at one point and then we're offering free now. It's always been free. And I think we can fly that flag.
Absolutely. Everyone has to pay subscriptions for so many different content services these days. So the question is how do radio broadcasters bring DSP listeners back? You can kind of see this is why these streaming listeners are tuning back to radio. You see it right on the screen here. It's fun to listen. Radio's free. New music discovery. Almost 1 out of 3 people are coming back to radio because of the new music discovery. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in a second. But look at the bars that are highlighted in the lighter green. And that's an overarching theme of today's webinar. It's the human experience that radio can uniquely offer. Streaming can't replicate these things. Community and local events, preferring personalities with the music. And I know
And,
yes, go ahead, Clay.
no, and can't number one, it's fun to listen to the radio. Also tied to those two bars because I mean, part of the fun of the radio is the air personalities, the jocks, somebody being funny, those kinds of things. Correct? I mean, could we make that correlation?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a drive. What creates fun between the songs? It's that human element. It's that connection. And I'm telling you, these days, people feel more isolated than ever. They feel more stressed than ever. And one of the things we talk with our clients and the hosts on those client stations about a lot is just the value and the noble career that they have in helping people with their day. These listeners might spend 5 or 10 or 15 minutes on their way to work listening to a host, and they're stressed. There's a lot going on in the world. We know that. And the fact that that personality can help that listener escape, even if it's just for a few minutes a day, is a really noble pursuit. And I think it's worth us reminding the talent of the important role they play in people's lives. Okay, so let's talk about human curated playlists versus AI. When we talk about the human element and the strengths that radio has in that regard, we forget that there is a human element to the curation of playlists. So we asked about the perceived value of a human curated playlist versus one that an algorithm creates on a streaming service. And sure enough, humans prefer, these people in the survey prefer a human curated playlist more than an AI generated one by, you can see, nearly 6 to 10. That's even true among 18 to 24-year-olds. This isn't driven by older listeners. Just across the board, there is a perceived value when a playlist is created by a human. And we actually have some video from those one-on-one video focus blogs where listeners are kind of articulating their feelings about that. So let's.
For radio, I would prefer to have a playlist done by a human, just because then you get a variety of different types of country music. It's not going to be the same sound throughout the whole program. So when you have the human turn on it, then you get a bigger variety of music, which makes your playlist better.
I think it's important to also have that human judgment element, especially like knowing your locale, knowing the people who live in your area, because definitely different regions might have different favorites.
I would have to say, whenever you have a human thinking about it, they're looking at the data, they're analyzing it, they understand how it works. It's a little bit better. It's got more of a human's touch.
If it's an AI-driven playlist, you're getting more of what that system wants you to listen to.
Kind of interesting, right? They feel like the human element can help introduce them to songs that an algorithm based on past songs they liked
This is such an important topic right now. I mean, you're seeing these uh, commencement speakers being booed when they mention AI. It's especially um, hot with the younger demographic. We need to figure out how to message this on our stations. I think it's an interesting way to attract, younger consumers to radio.
Yeah,
No,
I was going to ask, how do you prove that? How do you show that? How do you promote that? I mean, Justin said it best. How do you promote that it is humans, that it is because I think unless it's disclosed, and I know there's all kinds of discussion about using AI and and being honest about it, but at the same time, how do you without full disclosure, how do you prove that it is human?
yep. I mean, hey, I'm a fan of AI, and I think AI can provide a lot of value, but when it comes to the on-air content, I, I radio needs to make much more of a deal about this than they have been so far. And I do feel like, okay, what is the phrasing and the terminology that can be used where we can clearly articulate that? But I think it goes even beyond a slogan to just organically integrating that into the programming. For example, an on-air host talking to the music director. Hey, what songs are you looking at this week? I really feel like this song should be number one. Where's your head at about it? It's just organic demonstrations of the fact that there are people back there that are creating this listening experience.
That's a good point. I mean, I really believe if we don't say it, we're not going to get credit for it, right?
Right.
We have to figure out a way to say it. And I think it's probably a combination of imaging, messaging, and organic on-air discussion, like you're suggesting. But we got to figure out a way to message this on our stations.
And we have to have a sense of urgency about it. I mean, there's no better time than start it today. So, I mean, that's our hope. That's all of us are hoping that broadcasters see this and put together an action plan so that, tomorrow morning it's on the air somehow.
Yeah, and love your idea of even like a feature. Maybe there's a feature once a day part or something like that. I mean, Lord knows sales need something else to sell so they can attach a sponsor to it.
And they will, hopefully. So let's talk about local radio's USP versus streaming. And we asked open-ended questions of the 1,500 people, a ton of data behind this that we then analyzed and then put them into themes, into buckets, just so that you could get a sense of what all of these people were talking about as far as what separates radio from streaming services. So it boils down to this. It's a sense of community. 4 out of 10 people, in their own words, open-ended, talked about a sense of community being one of radio's unique points. Local personalities, 1 out of 3 people. A local connection, another 1 out of 3 people. And then there were more responses in terms of entertainment and humor, variety of eras. It's a long tail of other responses, but you can see the big 3: community, personalities, local connection. And contests and giveaways. So here are some of the comments. We wanted to pull some of the comments that we really feel like typified what you saw on the previous screen. Here's a woman, the way the DJs talk about local events. It makes local radio more enjoyable, makes me feel more connected to my community. Funny personalities and contests. Woman at the bottom, a heavy listener to country music. They're good people, genuine, humble people. Again, she didn't have to say that. And these are really emotional ways of talking about the personalities that she listens to on the radio. Okay, so what do listeners want from country radio? Top rated features include playing the best songs, real personalities, not AI generated voices, good variety of newer and older country songs, and new music discovery. So new music and recent songs from recent years, clearly important. Let's dig into that a little bit more. You see the chart of all of the responses here. The percentages you see are the percentage of people in this survey rating each of these items an 8 to 10. So 8 out of 10 people said playing the best songs is very important to them. But look at what's number 2. Real personalities, not AI generated voices. Number two, that'll help you sit up in your chair and why we need a real sense of action over this. What else do you see here? Broadcasting live and local. Those are important, but in fact, the real personalities, not AI generated voices, is even more important. What stood out to me on this as well is when you see the live and local, that those qualities are more important than the host broadcasting live from your area. So if the host isn't in that listener's area code, it's okay as long as that host is still keeping that listener connected to that listener's local community. So you can kind of see there's a subtle difference here in the way that we can execute what's important to people. Best to listen to while you work. We know there's a lot of quarter hours, a lot of minutes of listening. No longer are the days where we can identify and influence that one work controller in an office. We have to earn every fan that listens to us during the day at work because more people than ever before can make their own decision about what they listen to during the workday. And so our actions have to be different in acquiring those at work listeners. And it's critical that we do that. It's more competitive for listenership during the workday than it ever has been before for radio. And then you can see a listener feels like it's more important to be connected locally with then having a major connection to Nashville. It's more important talking about what's happening on that listener's main street than it is on Lower Broadway in Nashville. And so when we isolate DSP listeners in order to figure out what drives the appeal to radio for these people, how do we pull DSP listeners into using radio more? The human element is something radio does uniquely well. It's something DSPs can't replicate. You see that right on the screen. Real personalities, not AI generated voices. These are people that are listening to DSPs all the time. All right, next, when we look at people's favorite country radio station, what do they like about that favorite country radio station? And again, you see a lot of these other similar themes. It's free. They like the personalities, good companionship, community updates, personalities that are entertaining. This is all the glue that helps you tie your radio station with your P1s. That's how you make the connection. All right, and then let's talk about new music discovery for a minute. Radio still has the advantage for where country fans first discover new music. All right, we have credibility. Radio has credibility in that regard. What are some of the things people don't like about their favorite country radio station? Too many commercials, more than half the people. Not a surprise, right? And probably some of you will be rolling your eyes saying, well, yeah, that's obvious, Hal. So what? We have to play commercials. I don't think this is a throwaway data point here. All right, this is radio's number one vulnerability. And for me, the action coming out of this is we need to put more of a sense of urgency on generating non-spot revenue. Listeners are begging us to create more non-spot revenue so we're not playing as many commercials while still hitting the budgets that we need to make as an industry. And we're in the age of the creator economy. And when creator ad and brand partnerships globally are measured, when you measure the dollars that the creator economy makes from ads and branding, it's actually on par with radio advertising, between 30 and 40 billion globally. And the creator economy grew 25% last year. So we write about this on our Substack. So if you don't follow us on Substack or don't get our email newsletter, check that out. We just did a whole post that gets into that in more detail. But we're in the age of the creator economy. Radio needs to tap into that, and we can reduce spot loads while we do that too.
I think there are some things stations can do to address this. When was the last time you did a barter audit? A lot of times these barter contracts that we sign, kind of forget about them. And then, maybe there's a PD change or a change in management, and no one ever canceled these barter spots for a product we're no longer using. There's a lot of added value that perhaps we don't do added value for on air. Maybe we do it for some other, off air product. There's lots of things that local stations can do to address the commercial issue. And then if they're able to meaningfully reduce their inventory, promote it, tell listeners that you're now, running less commercials, is more music, right? Like I said earlier, if we don't say it, we don't get credit for it.
I love it.
Yep, it's true.
I'm on board. So another thing that jumps out to me is 1 out of 5 people say the signal isn't always good. Well, we have an app for that. So this is another piece of data that shows we need to talk about our apps more. And I know broadcasters feel like they're talking at their ears about the app. We have an app. We have an app. I'm guaranteeing you, I'll bet you a steak dinner, a larger percentage of your listeners than you even realize still don't realize you have an app or aren't thinking about downloading the app. And I'll also bet the number one reason they haven't downloaded it, it's not that they don't want to or they maybe had a bad experience, they just haven't thought about it. So another action we're going to recommend coming out of this is let's freshen that up. Let's freshen up the playbook on app activations. I mean, if you could get a 1 out of 5 lift just by converting some of these people to app usage, you do it, right? So we pulled some other comments directly from our survey about why listeners prefer local radio over streaming. And we highlighted and read some of the statements that really jumped out to us. The sense of community is a way to enhance the listening experience. Local DJs feel like someone I'd be friends with rather than a streaming service. Hearing that someone else went through what you went through after a song you felt, that means a lot, right? Really some emotional comments that we saw throughout this study. So let's talk about those radio personalities in a little bit more detail. What about radio personalities is important with these listeners? And we're pulling these findings across the entire study in terms of the closed-ended and the open-ended responses. It's about being real and authentic, be vulnerable on the air. It's more important than ever, especially younger listeners, Zillennials, love when a personality they're listening to reveals things that are vulnerable and some weaknesses. And that helps with the companionship. Right, you get people through their day. Like I said, even if that listener's having a hard day, you help them escape for a few minutes. And then the relatability. The stations that have these engaging hosts are seen as more relatable, reinforcing audience connection. And it's not just about the morning show. We need to strive to have star level talent all through the day. And here are some comments specifically about radio personalities. All right, getting to hear that same radio personality every morning becomes part of your routine. And hey, we know for those broadcasters that are in PPM markets, we know the importance, how critical it is to have a daily habit, to be part of a listener's daily habit and daily cue. All right, you can read some of the other comments here. The entertainment, the local connection, that personal touch is what keeps me coming back. So funny, caring, easy to listen to, and relatable. That combination in a host is what keeps me coming back. You kind of see, this is how we get regular usage from people, and it isn't just about the morning show. It's all through the day. If we're going to do battle during the workday, we need to have a great air talent during the workday too, providing all of these things that we're talking about today. All right, so favorite country radio, likes and dislikes. Listeners value that human connection. Relatability of lyrics and storytelling, all of that. You see all of that throughout the comments here. So let's talk about contest engagement. We've been seeing this over and over in many studies. We feel like we are in the golden age of contests. Half of the people in this sample have participated in contests. Not just enjoying it passively, a third of the people enjoy them passively, have not participated, but half of the people we surveyed have participated in contests. That's huge. So it's definitely the golden age of contests. And so when we look at that in a little more detail, that middle box are people who are listening more to country music, and the majority, indexing higher than the total, the majority are actively trying to win contests. So you can kind of see with this number here that contesting can actually become a force multiplier because you're engaging those people that are heavy users to radio, heavy listening more to country music. You can kind of see that, 1 + 1 starts to equal 3 after a while. So we also dug into that a little more deeply in terms of looking at what actual prizes are the greatest influence on listening. As you would guess, cash is king, but it's not just about cash. It's actually more valuable for you to give away multiple $1,000 prizes than it is to give away one $10,000 prize. So that's one thing. But look at the bar that we have highlighted here for gas cards and grocery cards. Now, important, the field work, the surveys were conducted back in February, late January into early February. That was before the start of the war in Iran, when then gas prices started to skyrocket. So we can safely assume that the perceived value of gas cards is even higher today than it is compared to what you see on screen right here. So we dug into that a little bit, and we geeked out on government websites and looked at some of the metrics in terms of the trending on gas prices at the top, and then groceries that you see in the lower right. The prices just for the normal expenses of a person's day are continuing to spike higher. So undoubtedly, the appeal of these types of gift cards are going to be higher than maybe we've ever seen before. And in fact, the new numbers that the government released in May show that consumer sentiment is at its lowest level in 70 years. We're talking about cultural moments here that radio can tap into and take advantage of, yes, but also just help consumers. And that's where we can really develop, new emotional hooks with the listeners that are using us.
So, or Kevin, is there any connection between, Nielsen meter or diary holders and contests with the ratings? I mean, I guess my question is, are diary meter holders more likely to engage with contests than non?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things, even people that are participating in this kind of research are more likely to be a ratings participant. They're research friendly, right? So yeah, we definitely see, we'll ask about likelihood to participate in ratings. And yeah, we definitely see that. Contest players are, if you can influence the contest players, that's why you can affect ratings. One way.
Yep. So research is only as good as actions coming out. So we all worked together to put together not only a summary of the key points of this research, but also actions you can take coming out based on what we've learned in this study. So let's break it down in terms of themes, in terms of positioning and strategy. What actions can we take? We know the human connection is country radio superpower. We've seen it all through the webinar today. So, look at every ad, social posts, every promo you do should reflect a message that we're local, we're live, we're human, connected. DSPs sell the algorithms, radio broadcasters sell people. And as AI generated content proliferates, your positioning can get even stronger, not weaker. It has to be an action plan that goes through every department inside the radio station on the DSP comparison gap. All right, what can a DSP do? Not local personalities. So even the sales department can kind of tap into some of the findings of this research. And then survey your audience on local USP performance a couple times a year. Get any way you can, collect data to see how you're doing, see if you're making progress. and then reassess your plan, reassess your actions based on what you're finding in those surveys. When it comes to personalities, formalize a no AI voices policy. Say it on the air, like Justin was saying. You're not going to get credit unless you say it. I love that. That succinctly says it all. So make a brand statement across all the channels, but also do it organically within the programming all through the day. Train your talent on the companion, not announcer framework. Coach your talent. Get back to really spending a lot of time with your talent so they understand the difference between just being a DJ, an announcer, and really being a companion for people. And I would talk about and remind your talent about all the stuff happening in the world and what listeners are going through and the role they play in helping listeners through the day. Tap into the emotion of the life experience of the songs. Country music is, and we saw this in other comments, we didn't talk about it a lot today, but we talked about it in Nashville on stage, that these listeners love country music because of the storytelling. So the air talent should be sharing what those lyrics mean to them, and the listeners will connect with that too. In terms of community, launch a weekly What's Happening segment. Just brand hooks through the radio station that show that your radio station is connected to the local community. Brand the local news, traffic, and weather as a feature. And I know not every radio station will do news and traffic or weather necessarily. Do it your own way and provide some kind of local information in a way that makes sense for your brand. And try to find the resources to broadcast live in your community every month. It's a great way to tie into advertisers too, so you can kind of check off multiple boxes at one time. And then in terms of contesting, move away from that large cash prize. The oh wow on some of those larger cash prizes aren't what they used to be in the age of Mr. Beast, giving away many millions in a shot. And what we find in this survey is it's even more valuable to give away multiple $1,000 cash prizes instead of one. And then run time-specific contests, drive those appointments to listening. If they're listening, 1 or 2 times a week, get them listening 3 or 4 times a week. And we've got to get them back every day. That's the ultimate goal. And review your app activation strategy. Make one if you don't have one. And create some contesting around app activations. We know that when listeners have an app on their phone, they're going to be much more likely to use you every day if you're right on their phone. And in terms of music programming, introduce named human curation blocks to contrast those algorithms. Just come up with an entire action plan through your programming to highlight that. And then highlight new music discovery. People are coming to radio for new music discovery. And then for app and streaming, make the app the hub for all the on-air interaction. And the app is also another great way to lean into the creator economy and think about it as an iceberg. The best content is on the air, but a lot of other content that you and your hosts can generate can be below the water on the app, on social media. Develop a clipping strategy. I think I might have that on that list too, but encourage your on-air talent to think of themselves not as radio DJs, but as another type of content creator. As far as the app, push notifications every time a contest window opens, and create a heard it first shareable social content tactic. You can put it on your app. It can always live on your app. Throw it on social, throw it on the air as well. Plant a flag for new music discovery. So, and I know the guys have other comments as well, but we want to keep the conversation going even beyond this webinar. So we'd love to hear from you directly, as RJ said at the top.
So one thing, Hal, that I wanted to ask about, because some people will see this, this is my one concern. Some people will see something like this and they'll go, oh, well, I've got to be out in the community all the time, or I got to go do this. So they're going to go do a remote at a car dealer and give away free pizza and free Cokes. That's not what we're talking about here. Or I've got to do a time a time contest on the air, and so I'm going to give away 2 free tickets to, I don't know, an escape room. It's like we don't just want to throw things at the wall and just to be able to check the box and say, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff. It's got to be quality too, correct?
I love that. Yes, because you could have a list of actions from an action plan and say, "Oh yeah, we did that. We did that." Did you really do it? Are you really embracing some of these tactics organically all through the programming? And yeah, it's not just about going, setting up some balloons and a table at a car dealership and saying, "Okay, now we're local." You can we've all heard really good air talent that is voice tracked and not inside that area code, and they sound more local than local hosts. And I think that's the bar we have to set for all of our talent and our execution.
Yeah, I think really setting a filter about how are these things that we do in the community building a connection for local, right? So if it's a Seafair festival in Seattle, having somebody down there interviewing the drivers, if it's talking about on air what the traffic is going to be like getting down to Seafair, all those things are just little things that help build that community connection because you're there, it's relatable, and it's demonstrating that locality.
That's a specific example, and that's a great example of, okay, yeah, let's do those interviews. Let's put some of that on the air. Let's make sure it's on social as well, or it's on the app, and let's make sure we're spreading that content everywhere so that listeners can see and feel and we are credibly local.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't want people to fall into, well, we're active, we're doing things, but that's great, but none of it means anything, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's just busy work. That's like, you're sending people out to hang some banners on a fence and, broadcasting live or what sounds like live because you voice tracked it before you got there. So it's just a different animal. It's just to think about the quality as well.
Going back to the number one reason people said they like listening to country radio is because it's fun to listen to. What are some of the other things program directors and on-air personalities should be doing, or even marketing directors, anyone at part of the team? What are the things that we should be doing to up the fun factor on country radio?
I mean, one thing that just off the top of my head is I think there has to be more of an appreciation from the talent for show prep. And really, even if you're doing a midday show and you're not talking a lot, and we're not advocating for a midday host to talk a lot on the air, but doing more prep so that that 15 seconds is pure magic and that it checks off some of these boxes of, hey, I'm a real human right here. I'm going to connect you to your community. I'm going to introduce you to that new song that I really love or that our music director really loves, right? More preparation and not just opening up the mic, hoping that break turns out okay.
Yeah, I was also thinking about things like imaging. I listen to stations all the time, and some of the stations are really stale from an imaging standpoint, or they're just like very robotic, clinical. They don't sound fun. I think that programmers could do a lot to improve the stationality with the imaging, but also contesting. The standard caller 9 contests or text to win are sort of outdated. Like, the best contests are the ones that are fun to listen to, even if I'm not participating. And just giving away $1,000 is great, and that can move the ratings needle, but it's not necessarily fun to listen to. So those are the two things that I would suggest programmers look at.
I love that. And I think maybe the filter, and this is what you're talking about, is the filter to use if you're the program director is, does this radio station actually sound uniquely like my market, or could it really be just plopped anywhere? And if it's the latter, let's get to work.
Yeah, I think you hit on something though too. If fun is in your filter, for content, that will go a long way because the talent know that that's one of the factors. Make sure we're hiring fun talent. Put the promotions through the fun filter, the imaging through that fun filter. It really is a culture that's got to be, 24/7. So,
And to kind of correct myself, the $1,000 contests, there is a way to make those things sound fun, right? With really creative promos and imaging, and even if it is a boring kind of execution, there is a way to add some stationality and make it sound fun. So I want to correct myself there, because I've heard radio stations that are doing those national cash contests that really make it sound fun and local and do a great job.
Hey
And
guys,
others that don't.
I have two questions for Hal and Kevin, and also Justin and Clay, that kind of fall under the umbrella of authenticity. Hal and Kevin, you guys mentioned at the top that you're about to celebrate your 20th year of your company, and so you've been doing research a long time, and probably longer than the 20 years you've been with the company. Do you find that listeners that you're serving are more savvy and sophisticated than they were 20 years ago about the way radio produces and presents content on the air? Because the reason I ask that is, according to this, they're aware of AI. They know that's happening. They are just dismissing that. They don't want any part of that. They're aware that some personalities aren't local in their market. They're coming from another market, but they're okay with it as long as they address the community, live and local, and current events in the community. Is that what you're seeing as you look back on a 20-year history of surveying listeners?
I think listeners are more media savvy today, not just with radio, but with all media.
With everything, because there's so much available to them, so they're students of it. So maybe in that, sorry to cut you off there, Kevin, I was just thinking that the point is, since they're more savvy, maybe we, in the spirit of authenticity, radio needs to kind of nuance the way that we convey authenticity on the air in contesting or relating to music and discovery and all that.
I think you're right. I think along with wanting authenticity, I think their BS meter is higher than it's ever been.
Yeah,
right?
they demand authenticity, right?
Yeah, they do. And they sniff it out. And if it doesn't feel authentic, then they kind of put it aside. And I think that's true not only in country, I think it's in general. All media consumers, people in general are that way today.
And to that point, Justin, a question for you, and Clay, since Clay is a Hall of Fame radio broadcaster and programmer. The personalities, that human connection, and that music discovery, which is very high among radio listeners, that might surprise some people. Do you think that number was higher than you expected it to be in terms of the level of music discovery that we saw there? And couldn't you coach on a nuanced level, Justin, your personalities to lean into that authenticity and that human connection by really connecting to a new song, championing it? Boy, I really love that song. That's amazing. Maybe a story about how you met Stella Lefty somewhere, or Ella Langley. I mean, I feel like that's a real opportunity, again, under the umbrella of authenticity.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. In fact, I'm obviously involved in all the formats at Beasley, all the different current music formats. I don't think there's another format where new music is so important to the listeners than country. It's super important. And, so we need to lean into the world premieres. We need to, we have the hottest format. We have the hottest artists in all of music. I mean, Ella Langley is not only the #1 country artist right now, she's the #1 artist in all of music. So if we're not planting the flag that we are the place for new music, we're missing out on a big opportunity.
Yeah, and Clay, I'm asking you kind of the same question, but you're out of radio for a little bit on the label side, and don't you want radio to lean more into this discovery and introduction of new artists and their background and their backstory? I think country radio does a very good job of that, probably better than other formats. But have you seen, with voice tracking and point to point and all this stuff that happens, radio back away from that in the last 10, 15 years? I think you're on mute.
I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, yes, I was agreeing with you, as I usually do, RJ. Yeah, I think, look, with the DSPs having so many opportunities to expose so much music, I mean, you can see it where, there's how many different country playlists are there on the different platforms, and each platform probably has 10 to 15 country playlists. And they break them out into, chilling on a dirt road, beach bar, so they can segment those things, workout, mood based, all of that kind of stuff. And, country has a radio station only has one, has only one thing, and they've got to be all things to all people. And so you get that they've got to mix in, because we also saw in this research that they want some of the older songs. They want, I heard The River by Garth Brooks yesterday on a radio station in Nashville, and it sounded incredible still to this day on the radio station, mixed in with Tucker Wetmore and Jordan Davis and others. And so I think programmers are always walking a fine line of giving listeners the hits that they want and that we know are hits, but also discovering new music. I do think we see in consolidation where there are many more centralized people making the calls across all the radio stations. I hope it gets back to the point where programmers make their own local decisions, or at least if they're passionate about something, they can go play it, because they believe in a song or believe in an artist. But this is a hill that we've been long, has always been part of the arsenal of a radio station, where it was, really wanting to make sure that the music hill and the new music hill, that a radio station owned that, because we are that source of information. We are that, radio is that place where people come, and very rarely do you get an opportunity for an air personality to go, this is a brand new artist, this is their first song, this is that, whatever, or it's a brand new song by Jason Aldean or Bailey Zimmerman or something like that, and really set it up, really sell it, really play it, show the passion, talk about it, all of that kind of stuff. It's almost like an educational process, because just like we saw, where, they want to see behind the scenes and they want to see people's personal lives and all that kind of stuff. Listeners want to know that information. They want to know why they should care about that song, not just because it's a new Jason Aldean song, but why.
Well, and going back to the first point that we made on this meeting, 80% of our audience is using these DSPs in addition to us. So programmers should be looking at those streaming charts to kind of identify some of those, new artists or new songs bubbling up, so they can be on the cutting edge and be able to, again, plant the flag that this is the place to discover the best new music.
I hope the data in this presentation today also helps bring the record company community and artists and radio together even closer. I know in country it's already great, especially compared to other formats, I feel like. But I'd like to see even more collaboration between artists, radio, and labels, because I think radio can play a key role in developing even more stars and bringing the stars closer to listeners. And it doesn't take a lot of extra work for an artist to help radio kind of personalize them. I think it would help everybody.
But I will say, and we'll cover this a little bit more in the next 360 webinar, but listeners love the new music and they try to keep up on it, but it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose. We asked them how many artists were the artists that they really like today, and a lot of them could name, Morgan Wallen and Ella and Laney, and they've named 3 or 4, but the list wouldn't get much more than 7 for most people. And a lot of times it was going back even further. So, the more we can do to help put a face to some of the new songs, I think is going to help, develop the bench.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in the business and live, eat it, and breathe it every single day. And I'll ask Justin Chase, like, I can't keep up with all the new artists and all the music that's coming and the new songs. And I mean, there's 1,000 of them a day. I mean, a week. How do we expect listeners who are living completely different lives and they're going to work and dealing with families and kids, and this is not their job? I don't know how we would expect them to do that. And so when we think we get tired of selling a song or, promoting something, we're just getting started. That's the way it should be.
Oh yeah. I mean, these days, if a song doesn't have, 400 or 500 spins on your station, it's probably still pretty unfamiliar to your audience. And like you said, Clay, radio is one to many. So we have to, be a little more selective. But I think, the data that we need to look at to help make those decisions is much wider now, and we have a lot more data to look at, not just the streaming, but all the other data sources that our programmers are able to look at. All that needs to be considered, but we need to sell it and plant the flag.
Excellent. Hey, as we wrap up here, Hal, can we swap out the screen share, because I want to share your yeah, there it is. I want to share your direct information. I know that the QR code was helpful, but here's the direct email for how to reach Hal and Kevin and Justin and Clay if you have any further questions on that. You can also follow CRS on all our socials. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Hal, Kevin, great stuff. And we'll see you very soon, because we're going to come back and talk about some music components, again, pulled out of the greater study that we saw at CRS back in March. And if anyone wants to see that presentation, you can go to countryradioseminar.com. Not only is the video of Hal and Kevin's presentation available to you, but the deck that they presented there. So you can study up on that, and then we'll come back and parse out more information on the next CRS 360. We'll announce when that's coming. It'll probably be in June. But thank you guys. Appreciate it. As always, amazing information and a great conversation as well.
Thank you. Great job, Kevin and Hal.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.